You know that moment when everything you've worked for hangs by a thread? When someone you love becomes the very person threatening to destroy your dreams. I never thought my own father would be the one to push me to the edge of losing everything I'd fought so hard to achieve. But here I am, sitting in my car outside my office building, hands shaking as I dial HR's number, ready to throw away my dream job because of what my dad has been doing behind my back. I'm 26 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been clawing my way up the ladder at Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the city. It wasn't easy getting here. I graduated with a degree in marketing and communications, spent 2 years in unpaid internships, lived on ramen noodles and whatever part-time job I could find, all while sending out hundreds of applications. Most companies didn't even bother to send rejection emails. But Morrison & Associates was different. They saw potential in me. Sarah Chin, the creative director, took me under her wing during my interview process. She looked at my portfolio, listened to my ideas about digital storytelling and authentic brand connections, and something clicked. When I got the call that I'd been hired as a junior account coordinator, I literally cried in the grocery store parking lot. My parents' reaction was complicated. Mom was thrilled, hugging me and talking about how proud she was. Dad had this look on his face I couldn't quite read. He congratulated me, sure, but there was something in his voice that felt hollow, like he was reading lines from a script he didn't believe in. You see, my dad, Robert Kane, is a construction foreman. He's worked with his hands his entire life, building houses, fixing foundations, leading crews through projects that actually create something tangible you can point to and say, I built that. He's proud of his work, and he should be. But he's also someone who's always been suspicious of what he calls fancy office jobs, and people who push papers around pretending it's real work. Growing up, whenever I talked about wanting to work in marketing or advertising, Dad would get this expression like I just told him I wanted to become a professional video game player or something equally frivolous in his mind. He'd mutter things like, that's not a real job, or, you can't build anything lasting with fancy words and computer screens. I thought once I actually got hired, once I started bringing home a decent paycheck and could show him the campaigns I was working on, the brands I was helping to grow, he'd understand. I thought he'd see that marketing isn't just pushing papers, but actually about connecting people with products and services they need, about telling stories that matter, about building relationships between companies and communities. I was wrong. The first few months at Morrison & Associates were incredible. I was working on campaigns for local restaurants, helping them recover from the pandemic by creating social media strategies that showcased their stories, their families, the generations of recipes they were fighting to preserve. I was doing work that felt meaningful, that was helping real people save their livelihoods. I'd come home excited, telling my parents about the mom-and-pop Italian place whose sales increased by 30% after our campaign, or the small bookstore that went from barely surviving to having lines out the door after we helped them launch their community reading events. Mom would listen with genuine interest, asking questions and celebrating these small victories with me. Dad would just nod politely and change the subject. But then things started getting weird. It began with small comments from my coworkers. Jake from the design team mentioned that his dad knew my dad from some construction project years ago, and apparently, my dad had been talking about how I was wasting my education on some marketing nonsense. I laughed it off, figuring it was just dad being dad, maybe venting to an old friend. Then Sarah called me into her office about 6 months into the job. She had this concerned look on her face that immediately made my stomach drop. Listen, she said, closing her laptop and giving me her full attention. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Has your family been having any financial troubles lately? The question caught me completely off guard. No, why would you ask that? Sarah hesitated, then pulled out her phone. I got a call yesterday from someone claiming to be your father. He said there was a family emergency, that you might need to take extended leave or possibly quit to help support the family. He was asking about severance packages and whether we had any kind of emergency financial assistance program. My blood turned to ice. What exactly did he say? He said you were too embarrassed to ask yourself, but that the family was in serious financial trouble and you might need to leave to take a higher-paying job, something more stable. He wanted to know what kind of reference we'd give you and whether there were any complications that might prevent you from getting hired elsewhere. I felt like I was going to be sick. Sarah, I swear to you we're not having financial problems. I never asked him to call you, and I have absolutely no intention of quitting. She nodded slowly. I figured something was off. The whole conversation felt strange. He kept emphasizing how marketing wasn't real work, and how you needed a proper job that would actually pay the bills long term. That night, I confronted my dad. At first, he denied everything, claiming he'd never called my office. But when I told him exactly what Sarah had said, word for word, his face changed. The denial crumbled, replaced by something that looked almost like guilt, but not quite. "Look," he said, sitting heavily at the kitchen table, "I'm worried about you, okay? This marketing thing, it's not stable. These creative jobs, they come and go. One day the company decides they don't need marketing anymore, and then what? You've got no real skills, no trade, nothing to fall back on." "Dad, I love this job. I'm good at it. I'm helping people." He scoffed. "Helping people? You're playing with computers and making pretty pictures. That's not helping anyone. I increased a struggling restaurant's sales by 30%. And what happens when that restaurant decides they don't need pretty pictures anymore? What happens when the economy gets bad and companies cut their marketing budgets first?" He leaned forward, his voice getting more intense. "I'm trying to look out for your future here. I know a guy, Jimmy Torrance, he runs a successful plumbing business. Real work, always in demand. He said he'd take you on as an apprentice." "I don't want to be a plumber, Dad." "Why not? It's honest work. Good money. Job security. Because I want to be in marketing. Because I went to college for this. Because I'm happy." He shook his head like I was speaking a foreign language. "Happy doesn't pay the bills when you're 50 and they decide to hire some kid half your age for half the salary." I thought that would be the end of it. I thought once I'd confronted him, once I'd made it clear that I knew what he'd done and that it was completely unacceptable, he'd back off. I was wrong again. 2 weeks later, Sarah called me into her office with a much more serious expression. This time she had Tom Morrison himself with her, the founding partner of the firm. My heart started racing before anyone said a word. "We need to discuss a situation," Tom said, his voice carefully neutral. "We've been receiving some unusual communications regarding your employment here." Sarah pulled out a folder. "Someone has been calling our clients directly, claiming to represent you in some capacity. They've been telling our clients that you're planning to leave the company soon and suggesting they might want to consider switching to a different marketing firm to avoid disruption to their campaigns." The room started spinning. "What?" Tom continued. "3 of your clients have called us in the past week, confused about these calls. The Romano's restaurant account was particularly concerned. They said a man claiming to be your business representative told them you were planning to start your own construction marketing company and suggested they might want to get ahead of the transition by switching to a firm that specializes in practical marketing for working-class businesses." I couldn't breathe. My dad hadn't just overstepped. He'd actively sabotaged my relationships with my clients. "The really concerning part," Sarah added, "is that whoever made these calls had detailed information about our client contracts, campaign timelines, and even some internal discussions about account strategies. This represents a serious breach of confidentiality." Tom's expression was grim. "We've had to spend the entire morning reassuring clients that you're not leaving and that there is no security breach. But frankly, this has created a significant trust issue. Our clients need to feel confident that their sensitive business information is protected." I felt like I was drowning. "I can explain. This is my father. He's been trying to get me to quit and do construction work instead. I had no idea he was calling clients." "How would your father have access to client information?" Tom asked. The question hit me like a slap. I sometimes work from home. I might have mentioned client names in conversation. But I never shared confidential information. I would never do that." Sarah and Tom exchanged glances. "We believe you," Sarah said carefully, "but this puts us in a very difficult position. We need to know that something like this won't happen again." "It won't," I said immediately. "I'll talk to him. I'll make sure he understands he cannot contact anyone related to my work ever again." Tom nodded slowly. "Here's what we need to happen. First, you need to have a very serious conversation with your father about professional boundaries and confidentiality. Second, we're going to need you to sign an additional confidentiality agreement specifically addressing family access to work information. And third, if anything like this happens again, we'll have no choice but to terminate your employment immediately." That evening, I was angrier than I'd ever been in my life. I walked into my parents' house ready for the fight of my life. Dad was watching TV in his recliner, acting like nothing had happened. "We need to talk. Now." He looked up with feigned innocence. "What's wrong?" "You called my clients." The innocent act dropped immediately. "I was trying to help." "Help?" "Dad, you nearly got me fired." Mom came running from the kitchen. "What's going on?" "Your husband has been calling my workplace and my clients, trying to sabotage my career." Mom turned to Dad with an expression I'd rarely seen. Robert, please tell me that's not true. Dad stood up, his jaw set in that stubborn way I knew meant he thought he was right and everyone else was crazy. I was trying to open her eyes to reality. These people don't care about her. They'll drop her the second it's convenient. I was showing her what kind of loyalty she can expect from that fancy office job. By lying to my clients? By pretending to represent me? By breaching confidentiality agreements that could get me sued? I didn't lie about anything. I told them you were thinking about starting your own business, which you should be. I told them you were considering more practical work, which you should be. I never said any of those things. But you should have. His voice rose to match mine. You're 26 years old, wasting your life making PowerPoints and playing with social media. You should be learning a trade, building something real, something that can't be outsourced to India or replaced by some computer program. Mom stepped between us. Robert, that's enough. This is her career, her choice. It's not a career, he shouted. It's a hobby that pays money until the company decides it doesn't want to pay for hobbies anymore. I felt tears starting to form, but I was too angry to cry. Dad, why can't you just support me? Why can't you be proud that I found something I love, something I'm good at? His expression softened slightly, but the stubbornness remained. Because I love you and I can see where this is headed. I've watched too many people get comfortable in jobs that seem secure until they're not. I don't want you to be 40 years old with no real skills when this marketing bubble bursts. Marketing isn't a bubble. It's been around forever and it's only getting more important. Until computers learn to do it better than humans. Then what? I realized we were never going to agree. He was so convinced that anything he didn't understand wasn't valuable that no amount of success or happiness on my part was going to change his mind. Okay, I said, my voice getting dangerously quiet. Here's what's going to happen. You are never, ever going to contact anyone related to my work again. Not my boss, not my clients, not my coworkers. If you have concerns about my career, you talk to me about them. What you did could have gotten me sued, Dad. Do you understand that? He crossed his arms. I was trying to help. Promise me you'll stay out of my professional life completely. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I can't promise that if I think you're making a mistake that's going to hurt you. That's when I knew this wasn't over. I left that night feeling defeated and scared. I'd managed to smooth things over at work, but I knew Tom and Sarah were watching me closely now. Any hint of another problem and I'd be gone. For about a month things seemed calm. Dad was polite but distant when we talked. He'd ask general questions about work but didn't offer opinions or advice. I started to think maybe he'd gotten the message. Then Jake from the design team approached me with a weird expression on his face. Hey, this is super random, but did your dad ask you to pass along his contact information to anyone here? My heart sank. Why? Because someone's been calling around asking for the person who handles hiring and claiming he's your father. He's been asking questions about our company's financial stability, whether we're planning any layoffs, what kind of benefits we offer compared to other industries. HR got 3 calls this week. I closed my eyes. What did he say exactly? Well, according to Jennifer in HR, he said he was doing research for his daughter because she was too polite to ask directly about job security. He wanted to know about our 5-year business projections, whether we'd survived previous economic downturns, stuff like that. Jennifer said it was weird because most of the questions were the kind of things competitors might ask, not family members. That afternoon, Jennifer from HR called me directly. We need to talk, she said, her voice serious. I've been getting calls from someone claiming to be your father, asking detailed questions about our company's business model, client retention rates, and financial stability. Some of his questions were concerning because they seemed designed to identify potential weaknesses in our business. I made an appointment to meet with her immediately. He's asked about our biggest clients, what percentage of our revenue comes from each account, whether we've lost any major accounts recently. Today he called asking about our employee retention rates and whether we offer severance packages. Then he asked whether employees who leave get to keep their client relationships or if there are non-compete clauses. I felt sick. These weren't the questions of a concerned father. These were the questions of someone doing competitive intelligence. Jennifer, I swear to you, I haven't asked him to research anything. I didn't even know he was calling. She nodded. I believe you. But I have to ask, do you have any idea why he might be asking these specific questions? Because some of them sound like someone trying to figure out how to poach our clients or recruit our employees. The implications hit me like a truck. Oh my God. He's been talking to that plumbing contractor, Jimmy Torrance. I think he's trying to figure out if Jimmy could start some kind of construction marketing company and steal our clients. Jennifer's expression grew very serious. That would constitute industrial espionage. Even if he's your father, if he's gathering intelligence on behalf of a potential competitor, that's corporate espionage. That night I didn't go home. I went straight to Dad's workplace. He was just finishing up a job site when I pulled up, still covered in sawdust and looking tired from a long day of actual physical labor. "We need to talk. Right now." He took one look at my face and knew he was in trouble. "What now?" "Corporate espionage, Dad. That's what you've been doing. It's illegal." His face went pale under the construction dust. "What are you talking about?" "The questions you've been asking HR. You're not asking as a concerned father. You're doing competitive research for Jimmy Torrance, aren't you?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "I was just trying to understand your company better." "Bullshit. You asked about client retention rates, revenue breakdowns, severance packages. Those aren't questions a parent asks. Those are questions a competitor asks." There was a long silence. Finally he sighed. "Jimmy mentioned he was thinking about expanding his business, maybe offering some marketing services to contractors and small businesses. I thought maybe if I could understand how your company works, I could help him build something better, something more stable for working people." "And you thought you could steal Morrison and Associates clients and employees to do it?" "I thought I could show you a better path forward." I stared at him in disbelief. "A better path forward? Dad, you're talking about destroying the company that gave me my dream job so you can create some fantasy business that would let you feel better about what I do for a living." "That's not." "Yes, it is." I was beyond anger now. I was heartbroken. "You're so ashamed of my career that you're willing to commit crimes to force me out of it." He finally looked at me directly. "I'm not ashamed of you. I'm scared for you. Why can't you trust me to make my own decisions? Why can't you believe that I know what I'm doing?" "Because I've seen too many people get blindsided by economic changes. I've watched friends lose everything because they put all their faith in industries that seemed permanent until they weren't." "So your solution is to sabotage my career before it can disappoint you?" He didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, I had the hardest conversation of my professional life. I walked into Tom Morrison's office and told him everything. Everything about my dad's calls, his motivations, his connection to Jimmy Torrance, all of it. Tom listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally, his expression getting more serious with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "I appreciate your honesty in coming to us with this. But you understand this puts us in an impossible position." "I know. We can't have employees whose family members are actively working to undermine our business, even if those employees are innocent. It creates too much liability, too much risk." I nodded, feeling numb. "Are you firing me?" "I should be. By all rights, this situation demands immediate termination." He paused, studying my face. "But Sarah believes in you and frankly, your work has been exceptional. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you 2 weeks to resolve this family situation completely. If your father makes any further contact with anyone connected to this company, employees, clients, vendors, anyone, you're terminated immediately. If we get any indication that he's sharing information about our business with potential competitors, you're terminated and we pursue legal action. And if I can get him to stop, then you keep your job, but with the understanding that this is your one and only chance. There won't be a third strike." That evening, I sat my parents down and laid out the situation exactly as it stood. "Dad, you have cost me my dream job. The only reason I still have it is because my boss likes my work enough to give me one more chance. But if you make even one more call, one more inquiry, one more attempt to interfere with my career, I'm fired. And then they're going to sue you for corporate espionage." Mom looked horrified. "Robert, please tell me you understand how serious this is." Dad was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I was trying to protect you. You were trying to control me," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Maybe," he admitted. "But I still think you're making a mistake betting your whole future on this marketing thing." I took a deep breath. "Then let me make that mistake. Let me fail on my own if that's what's going to happen. But stop trying to sabotage me before I get the chance to try." He looked at me for a long moment and I could see him wrestling with something internal. Finally he said, "Okay." "Okay what?" "Okay, I'll stay out of your work life. Completely. No calls, no questions, no research, nothing. Promise me." I but then he added, "But when this marketing bubble bursts and you need something more stable, don't say I didn't warn you." It wasn't the victory I'd hoped for, but it was enough. I kept my job. Dad kept his promise, mostly. He'd still make little comments about the instability of creative work, or mention job openings he'd heard about in more practical fields, but he stopped actively sabotaging my career. About a year later, I got promoted to account manager. My salary increased by 25%, I got my own office, and I was managing campaigns for some of the biggest brands in the region. When I told my parents about the promotion, Mom hugged me and said she was proud. Dad shook my hand and said, "That's nice, honey. Let's hope it lasts." Some things never change. But here's the thing I learned through all of this. Sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who are least equipped to understand your dreams. My dad grew up in a world where job security meant having a trade that couldn't be outsourced or automated, where success meant building something tangible with your hands that would outlast economic downturns and technological changes. In his mind, marketing was frivolous because he couldn't hold it in his hands. It was unstable because it seemed to exist only in the abstract world of computers and creativity. He genuinely believed he was protecting me from future disappointment by trying to steer me toward something more concrete, more traditionally secure. What he didn't understand was that security isn't just about having a job that can't be outsourced. It's about having skills that matter, building relationships that last, creating value that people recognize and are willing to pay for. My marketing work was helping real businesses solve real problems and connect with real customers. That's not abstract, that's essential. But more than that, he didn't understand that my happiness and sense of purpose mattered. Even if marketing turned out to be less stable than construction work, even if I ended up having to change careers someday, I needed the chance to succeed or fail on my own terms, doing work that felt meaningful to me. The hardest part wasn't almost losing my job or dealing with the stress of corporate espionage investigations. The hardest part was realizing that my dad and I might never see the world the same way, that the things he valued most and the things I valued most might always be fundamentally incompatible. I love my dad. I respect the work he does and the life he's built. But I also had to learn that loving someone doesn't mean letting them sabotage your dreams, even when they're doing it because they love you too. Today, 3 years later, I'm a senior account manager at Morrison & Associates. I've managed campaigns that have helped dozens of small businesses grow and thrive. I've won industry awards for creative storytelling. I've built a career that feels meaningful and sustainable, and I'm good at what I do. Dad still makes little comments sometimes about the instability of creative work, but he's also started asking more genuine questions about my projects. Last month, when I told him about a campaign I'd created for a family-owned construction company that increased their revenue by 40%, he actually seemed interested in the strategy behind it. "So you helped them get more customers?" he asked. "I helped them tell their story better so the right customers could find them," I explained. He thought about that for a moment. "That actually sounds useful." It's not exactly the enthusiastic support I'd always hoped for, but it's progress. And I've learned that sometimes progress is enough. The whole experience taught me something important about setting boundaries with family. When someone you love is actively working against your dreams, you have to be willing to draw lines and enforce consequences, even when it's painful. Even when they claim they're doing it out of love. Love that tries to control your choices isn't really love. It's fear masquerading as protection. Real love supports you in pursuing what makes you happy, even when it doesn't make sense to them, even when it scares them, even when it's not what they would choose for themselves. I almost lost everything because I was too afraid to set those boundaries earlier, too worried about hurting my dad's feelings to tell him clearly that his interference was unacceptable. By the time I finally stood up to him, the damage had already been done to my professional relationships and reputation. If I could go back, I would have had that difficult conversation much sooner. I would have made it clear from the beginning that while I valued his concern and advice, my career decisions were mine to make, and any attempt to interfere with my professional life would be met with serious consequences. But I also learned something about forgiveness and understanding. My dad's actions came from a place of genuine fear for my future, even if his methods were completely wrong. He grew up in a different economic reality, where certain types of jobs really were more stable and secure. He was trying to protect me from what he saw as inevitable disappointment. That doesn't excuse what he did, but understanding his motivation helped me figure out how to move forward in our relationship without carrying around resentment forever. So what would I tell someone else dealing with family members who are sabotaging their career dreams? First, set clear boundaries early and enforce them consistently. Make it crystal clear that while you value their input and concern, your professional life is off limits for their direct interference. Second, don't wait to address the problem. Every day you let it continue is another day of potential damage to your professional relationships and reputation. Third, document everything. Keep records of conversations, emails, any evidence of interference. If the situation escalates to the point where legal action becomes necessary, you'll need proof of what happened. Fourth, consider involving your employer sooner rather than later. I was terrified of telling my boss what was happening because I thought it would reflect poorly on me. But ultimately, being proactive and honest about the situation is what saved my job. Employers appreciate employees who come forward with problems rather than trying to hide them. And finally, remember that you can love someone and still refuse to let them destroy your dreams. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing people you care about. It's about protecting the things that matter most to you so you can continue to have healthy relationships with them. My relationship with my dad will probably never be perfect. He'll probably always think I should have learned a trade instead of pursuing marketing. But we found a way to coexist where he keeps his concerns to himself most of the time, and I don't take his occasional comments as seriously as I used to. The most important thing I learned is that other people's fear of your dreams doesn't make those dreams less valid. Their inability to understand what you're building doesn't make it less real or less valuable. Sometimes the people closest to us are the least qualified to judge what's best for our lives, simply because they're too invested in keeping us safe to let us take the risks necessary for growth. I'm still at Morrison & Associates. I'm still passionate about marketing and storytelling. I'm still helping businesses connect with their communities in meaningful ways. And yeah, the industry is constantly changing, technology is evolving, and there's no guarantee that marketing jobs will look the same in 20 years. But you know what? Construction is changing too. Automation is coming for blue-collar jobs just as much as white-collar ones. 3D printing is revolutionizing how buildings are constructed. Sustainable building practices are requiring new skills and knowledge that didn't exist when my dad learned his trade. The only real security in any career is the ability to adapt, learn, and create value for other people. And I'm doing that every day in my work, just in a different way than my dad does in his. So am I the asshole for threatening to quit my job because of what my dad was doing? I don't think so. I think I was someone trying to protect their career and their dreams from someone who claimed to love them but was actively working to destroy what they'd built. Sometimes love means stepping back and letting the people you care about succeed or fail on their own terms. Sometimes it means trusting that they know themselves and their industry better than you do. And sometimes it means admitting that your fears for their future don't justify sabotaging their present. What would you do if someone you loved was actively trying to destroy your dream career because they thought they knew better? Would you have handled it differently than I did? And how do you balance protecting your professional life with maintaining family relationships when those two things seem to be in direct conflict? I'd love to hear your thoughts because honestly, I'm still figuring out how to navigate this balance. But I do know one thing for sure. I'm glad I fought for my dreams even when it meant fighting against someone I love. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, you probably understand how complicated family relationships can be when career dreams are involved. If this resonated with you or if you've dealt with something similar, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you want to hear more real stories about workplace drama, family conflicts, and the messy reality of pursuing your dreams, make sure to subscribe. There are so many more stories to tell, and trust me, they only get more complicated from here.